The Cleveland Cavaliers are off to a blazing hot start this season, and while most of us already know that this team has been a lockdown defense for the last few years, I thought it would be a good idea to check up on the Cavalier defense and see how they have grown. Because right now the Cavs are holding opponents to just 107 points per 100 possessions. That's the 4th best mark in the NBA and Cleveland's best rating of the last 10 seasons. Now obviously it's a really small sample size, but the foundation for an elite defense has been built, so let's take a look at a few reasons why this is the case. It would be wrong to start anywhere other than the front court. For all the gripes that you can pick with Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen trying to fit next to each other, the reason this pairing has lasted so long is because they are a phenomenal defensive duo. Most teams would feel lucky to have just one of Allen or Mobley anchoring their defense, but the Cavs are able to ensure they get 48 minutes of premier defense in the paint by having Allen or Mobley on the court at all times. The Cavs are in the 84th percentile with Allen and Mobley on the floor defensively, and they stay well above league average even when just one of them is out there alone. This is a luxury that few teams have, and it makes Cleveland a pain in the neck to score on in the paint. Take this play in Milwaukee where Damian Lillard gets past his initial defender in Jarrett Allen, but then he has to face Evan Mobley in the paint after causing a breakdown, and that just feels unfair. The Cavs are holding opponents to the 4th worst field goal percentage in the restricted area this season, and you don't have to look too far to figure out why. But I'm sure I'll spend most of the season sharing defensive highlights from Mobley and Allen, and most of you are already aware of what they bring to the table. So I want to pivot and focus on the increased usage of Dean Wade instead, and how that has given the Cavaliers a new tool to play with. Because now you don't have just Allen and Mobley roaming the paint, but Wade is actually a surprisingly good weak side help defender. He's had a number of plays where he's rotated over to contest shots at the rim, and a 6'9" forward who can provide contests like this is insane to have next to the 2 elite bigs already in Cleveland. Wade is more than just a help defender, he's actually a jack of all trades defensively, and I don't think he's really gotten enough credit for this. Here he is stonewalling Giannis Antetokounmpo on an island, and here he is doing it again to Anthony Davis. And here he is doing the same thing to Cade Cunningham. Dean can move his feet on the perimeter, and he does a fantastic job recovering on this play even after Brunson makes him turn his hips the wrong direction. I mean, this is seriously impressive from a player who was backpedaling to get into the play and make a stop at the rim. But that's just who Dean Wade is. One thing that Wade's career high in minutes has allowed the Cavs to do this season is switch more often on defense. This is something they would go to obscene lengths to avoid doing in the past. I remember their games against Boston where I broke down how the Celtics just absolutely abused the Cavs for trying to avoid a switch and attempting to tag and recover. But it's impossible for any defender to tag and recover from this far out, but the Cavs really refused to concede a switch last season, and so other teams made them pay for it. So it's been a relief to see the Cavs are just switching at will under Kenny Atkinson. And right here is an example of why it works. You have Allen switching the ball screen to cut off the advantage right away, and since Wade is comfortable defending 1 through 5 in a pinch, there's really no ground gained for the Raptors, and it results in a turnover. Here's another example of the same switch between Wade and Allen. This time Cunningham has nowhere to go, and it's a hectic turnover collected by Wade. And so this makes life so much easier for the Cavs when they can switch on the perimeter and trust their backline of defense to hold down the fort. Here's one more switch, this time between Garland and Allen, and here they are switching to avoid giving any daylight to Damian Lillard, who was on fire from deep in this game. So Allen's able to cut him off, and when Lopez tries to slip to the rim, guess who steps in as a help defender to poke the ball loose and get a steal? So Cleveland has an elite collection of defenders in Mobley, Allen, and Wade, and we haven't even talked about Isaac Okoro yet, who is still the best perimeter defender on the roster. Here he fights over a screen, turns his hips, and explodes for a block on opening night, and you can always trust him one-on-one against basically any opposing guard in the league. But rather than focusing on Okoro's defense for the millionth video, I want to look at someone else as we wrap up, and that would be Darius Garland. Kenny Atkinson spoke before the season on how he thinks Garland has more to offer as a defender, and he's really inspired him on that end of the floor so far. Garland has bought into the challenge and is playing the best defense of his career, and this ties into why the Cavs have been able to switch more comfortably than in the past, because now they feel like they can rely on Garland even when opposing teams are hunting him. Here Detroit is targeting him in the pick and roll, but Garland accepts the challenge and manages to stay in front of Cade for a clean contest. And here he does a good job of making Kyle Kuzma pick up his dribble by being aggressive on the switch, and then Garland later in the play dives down to the corner to collect a steal and end the possession. We could really see Garland's commitment to being better on defense against New York, where the Knicks were trying really hard to target him, but he more than held his own. Like right here, he forces Bridges into a turnover, and then in crunch time, Garland squares off with Brunson and packs him in the paint for a big stop at the end of the game. So to summarize, the Cavs boast a frontcourt that can give them 48 minutes of elite defensive play every night, with a versatile wing defender in Dean Wade to make them even more dynamic, and finally, they're getting maximum buy-in from everyone else on the roster, even including the players I didn't name. And when you package all of that together, that makes them one of the best defensive teams in the league, and probably the best defense they have had in quite some time. I know their personnel hasn't changed much, so it might sound silly to say they've improved, but the difference this year is how they are being used and how the few gaps they used to have on defense are now being patched up to make them bulletproof against any matchup.